Welcome to 3P&R. I'm your host, Adam R. Joining me today is Lenny DePaul, Tommy Kilbride, and Roxanne from Manhunters Fugitive Task Force. How's everybody doing?
Hey.
We're doing great, Adam. Thanks for having us, and good to be back with the Marine and the rock star.
Yeah, we were talking in pre-podcast. We were highlighting one of Roxy's moments where she ran up on this fugitive, like instant, out of the car, instantly on that person. And I was impressed. Roxy's one of the people I'm impressed with the show. Another highlight, Tommy walking in to the station early, banging on doors. All right, guys, it's time to go. Like, I love that show. I really love that show. I would like that show to make a comeback.
Well, I'll tell you, when we kicked this thing off, and we shot three seasons, 62 episodes, I believe. It was, we hit the ground running. We had a huge task force that was stood up in May of 2002, 350 full-time investigators, 90 different agencies. And then they came to us and said, hey, guys, why don't we shoot a television show? You're congressionally funded. What a great way to show the American taxpayers on how some of their money's being spent. And I responded back to our headquarters and I said, are you crazy? We can't afford to even, we hit the ground running. We were up at dark 30 every morning, locking up about 100 to 110 fugitives a week just in our region alone. And now they want to shoot a television show. Well, Adam, guess what? I lost that conversation. And 3 years later, you got the stars of the show on with you tonight.
Yeah. To let people know, it's dangerous work. Like you in the show, it doesn't even example how dangerous it is. I'll give you an example. Brett Preston, he's a sergeant at Town of Sneed's Police Department, 24 years in service. And just a year ago, Lenny, you and I sent him some dark 30 gear. We got it for his whole department. Yep. Recently, Brett was shot 4 times in a line of duty, and he's currently recovering.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, speedy recovery you do, Brett. I know he's going to listen. He's going to come on and talk about his experiences, but that's just a highlight for how dangerous law enforcement it is. And so, we were discussing how people across the country are like, we should defund the police for whatever nonsense reason, not realizing there's some very undesirable people that you guys have to deal with. They don't realize the dangers in that. And, just watching your show, again, it's a show and it speeds up the process because you guys, one time you're in Brooklyn, the next time you're in Florida, in another case, you guys are in LA, you're everywhere and you don't even know what you're walking into. So you guys walk into fire, things that most people don't even want to deal with on a regular basis.
Well, when you target terrorists, murderers, rapists, arsonists, the worst of the worst, drug runners, gun runners, and then you look at Tommy Kilbride, and he's got all these illegal immigrants or aliens, rather, coming back into our country that have committed, egregious felons and whatnot, and he can speak more to that. But we didn't sleep much at all, and the numbers are staggering. The statistics are insane. And every one of these fugitives averaging 4 to 6 prior arrests. These are bad people. And Tommy, he'll tell you. Especially some of these crazies that come in from around the globe. They love our country, but they also love to get here and commit crimes, right, Tommy?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Like the one episode, Adam, Lenny, and Rox, is Aubrey Powell. That guy was good for 1,000 murders in Jamaica. As part of the Jamaican posse, that's just one example. He killed many, many people. Although, what we want him for, what we got him for here in America, is coming back into the country illegally. I locked up that guy 3 times myself, while on the task force with Lenny, Rox, everybody else. It's just ridiculous that, we send somebody to prison for a relatively long time. They get out, we deport them, and they come back again. How many times is this going to happen? We tried back in Kate's law. I actually made an appearance on Fox News regarding this specific issue. Kate, if you remember, was a woman in San Francisco that was murdered by an illegal alien. So we tried to make a law that said, well, if you're an illegal alien and we deport you and you come back and you kill someone in America, well, then you're going to get a minimum mandatory sentence of 20 years. Right? But I appeared on Fox News. I even, mentioned Senator Schumer's name and correctly begged them to let the law pass, and it never passed. Here we are, many years later after that incident, it doesn't pass. There's just some feeling with some people that, well, illegal aliens, what they call them now is illegal immigrants, which is not the legal term. It's illegal alien. That's the lawful term. And you let them back in the United States. Well, these are hardcore criminals. These are murderers, some of them, and we don't punish them hard enough. But on the show, when we locked up Powell for the third time, finally, he got lucky because he got a Judge Shinlin in the Southern District, one of the most liberal judges there are. And, he gets a slap on the wrist the first time. He violates her own sentence the second time, and he gets a little harder slap. And then the third time, a little bit harder. But still, he winds it all together. He probably gets 15 years in a federal prison, when he should have been doing 20 on each, which would have put 60, which would have put him away for life. But this is the system we have, Adam. We don't punish people hard enough, especially for a murder. But we had a lot of fun on the show besides all the, the bad news. We tried to keep it light all the time.
Yeah, that Aubrey Powell guy, that when you read about him and learn about the group he ran with, their way of developing their sense of power and putting that upon, they were killing people in numbers, like just spraying into crowds. That guy made me nervous. And in that particular episode where you guys are you're setting up surveillance, you're in a parking lot in LA, and you see one suspect turn out not to be him, but that just lets you know the fear that you guys are walking into a situation where you're not 100% sure what this guy's got. You do know what he's capable of. So for average citizens, and I want people to put this in their heads, you live in a community, you consider it safe. It takes one of these people to set up shop. And then before you know it, he's bringing other people. And they're not going to operate like a mom and pop store. They're doing this off the radar. And if you approach these people, it could cost you your life. And that's the need of your task force. That's the need of people like you. Because I promise that these very people that are crying, defund the police for whatever emotional social media nonsense they're following and engaging with, they're allowing these people to have opportunity to slip in and take over and do horrible things, period. So, I appreciate the work you do greatly, and we all should.
Well, thanks for that, Adam. And yeah, they called themselves the Jamaican Shower Posse for that exact same reason. They showered their victims with bullets, and they were a tough group back in the day. And yeah, we certainly had our share of Jamaican posse fugitives in handcuffs over the years. But it was when we were stood up in May of 2002. It was post 9/11. The FBI was focusing on domestic terrorism, and rightfully so. But Congress felt it necessary that we look in our own backyards, and there are some vicious animals out there that prey on the young, the elderly, and whatever. So to make our communities a safer place, and that force multiplier, that task force concept, everybody working together, which really didn't happen a lot back before I'll say even pre 9/11. We certainly were in the forefront, and as a flagship task force, as the model for the rest of the country, we were the largest and biggest, and still are, fugitive task force in the world. So like I said earlier, the numbers are staggering and whatnot, but I got to work with great people. Roxanne, I'd go through any door with her, and of course Tommy, and like he said a minute ago, we laughed a lot. You have to in this business. You can't take this home with you. We're going after people that we've all seen. Sadly, fugitives blow their brains out, get in shootouts, stabbings, killing. It's the worst of the worst. And we had a saying, we're the best of the best going after the worst of the worst. And that's, you talk about hitting the nail right on the head. That's exactly what we were. But,
and I think Roxy too. There's the episode where you're swearing in Roxy. She's getting on the task force. Roxy's a prime example of give me the ball, coach. I'm ready to play. She got in, sworn in, immediately there, presented a case, and right then and there tracked the person down and caught the person. It was a gentleman that was on a run for a rape. And it just, you could see the team. For one, people understand it's a team effort, right? There's no heroes on the team. Everyone is in together, all in sync. And just the contribution Roxy brought to it. Roxy, tell me your background's in, so you're born in New York. You're a detective, and then you get on the task force and immediately present this case, and you can see you were passionate about it.
Yes, that is correct. First, Adam, I just want to say thank you for highlighting our task force. It's definitely quite an honor to work for that agency. It's been definitely the highlight of my career. Being a detective in a small police department, not having access to a lot of the services that the US Marshal Services Office offers, it was definitely a home run. Because I would present my case and they would tell me what I'm allowed or could do outside of my jurisdiction, which before I didn't have, was able to do investigations. Usually you'll take a case and then you got to call a detective or a law enforcement agency, depending on where my target would have left to or is on the run or hiding. But on the task force, we're allowed to actually go to wherever our target is and do our investigation. So joining this team really opened the doors for me. And of course, like a kid in a candy shop, the first time you let me in, I went crazy. As soon as they said, hey, listen, your guy's in Florida and you can go down there and do this surveillance. It's how do you not hit the ground running and immediately jump on such a great opportunity? So yeah, I have a investigative background. I was, previously on a SWAT team. And so I knew that I can work with these guys and try to take advantage of all the services they could offer, but also other skill sets that other members of the team would bring on that I didn't have access before. A lot of, whether it be corrections or, learning new things about immigration with Tommy, just everyone had something to bring to the table. And it just, you're used to tasting one thing for a little while, and then it's kind of like a buffet. You've been used to eating one thing, and then now you have a serving of all these things that you can try. And that's how I felt on the team. They just some talented group of men and women that I got to work with. And it definitely was just such a highlight to be able to leave such a small little town and investigate my case all over the US.
Yeah. You in particular, I was beyond impressed. I'll tell you why, because you're back in the day, law enforcement was a male dominated, kind of an outfit, and you come in and you just let the world see women got it too. In fact, they got more than it, Well,
I think it's just, most women like to talk, and you should, I'm sure everybody has significant others. Women just love talking. And so it definitely helped out in the interview arena, because we could sit and talk for hours. So to be able to do investigations and talk to suspects about certain crimes and, gaining what we call verbal judo and being able to talk to people. Yeah, women bring a different aspect to it. And so in this scenario, it worked for me. I had already had, SWAT experience, so physically fit for the amount of cases that I would be jumping into. I was prepared mentally, and the experience of doing interviews. I definitely was prepared for it and loved every minute of it. And so, I think it gave a highlight to the rest of the world to see what women can do in all avenues of law enforcement. It's just so much different today.
Yeah. I watched a long time ago. So how that show got introduced to me, a friend of mine, John, he's an Army Ranger. He introduced the show to me. And so I put it on and I watched this. And one thing I can say for you, for Tommy, for Lenny, for Pep, for Michi, you guys example one thing across the board. It's a parallels. It's you all have the same attitude. It's that, give me the ball, coach. I'm ready to play. And in that episode, so you're in New York waiting to find out if this guy's up there. Lenny and his team are down in Florida. Lenny calls you, says, all right, pack your bags. We have good confirmation here. And it just, there's no one person was trying to shine as a hero. You guys waited to get together and you performed as a team. And I think that's your success.
Yes, 100%. 100%. It just, and like I said before, everyone has a different talent, and it definitely shined. It's hard. You know your area, you study your area, you know the style in which most of the suspects you're searching within your jurisdiction work and operate. But now to pick up and go to a whole nother state, sometime our cases will lead us up in the woods. How about New York, like other places like New York City? So it's nice that we can pick up and go to another task force in another arena, in another state, and be able to flow and work with those guys, to learn the area and find our suspect. And without them, we wouldn't be able to do it. You just cannot going to pick up and just show up on a block somewhere in some other state and think you're not going to get made, or think that people are going to just talk to you. So yeah, it definitely, we rely on each other to get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, and you got Lenny. Lenny, for me, I said this the last time I spoke to him, and probably every time ever there since. Like, he examples great leadership. Lenny's he's the coach. Period. You can see it. He's got that. And the best part about Lenny is that in the field, he allows everyone to gather thoughts, and he pulls from everyone. He's not calling shots based on experience. His experience shows that this team matters. You know. So Tommy, your energy, where do you get it from?
Mm-hmm. Well, being a Marine for 24 years and 18 days. But, you know, with Lenny, you know, on the comical side, you know, we went back and forth many times about, you know, the Navy and the Marine Corps. But Lenny was a good boss, just like you mentioned, and he was. You could do, you know, he didn't micromanage you. You know, we did what we had to do. Sometimes, you know, Lenny, remember, he was the commander, so he'd be back in the office. He'd worry about 300 investigators, not just 10 or 12 of us, you know, involved in the filming of the show. So he did. He's a good boss. And, you know, I say that because we're on air right now, but I do truly believe it. You know,
hey, Adam, I had a step.
Adam, let me say something about Roxy first. I've never even told this story to her. But one day we were sitting in this living room with a domestic violence victim. She probably remembers. You remember, Rox?
Which one was it?
Who knows?
The boxer?
So we're sitting in this living room, but it's a domestic violence. We're looking for the husband, right? And the husband beat the woman. So, you know, Roxy was there. Sometimes, you know, Adam, as you can well imagine, that, you know, women don't want to open up to men sometimes. And,
right,
you know, I'm not of the honey and the vinegar people, I'm not the honey guy. So I can assure Lenny and Roxy know what I mean. And from you watching the show, Adam, you know what I mean. So I ain't the honey guy. But anyway, so Roxy's talking to this victim, the domestic violence victim, and we're looking for the fugitive, which is her husband who beat her. And this woman's crying, you know. But Roxy was great. I mean, talking to her, calmed her down. You know, I was almost in tears, you know, the tough Marine. She was hurting this woman. But she did. She gave up the fugitive, and eventually we got him a few days later. But that was a good story. I never even discussed that one with Roxy to this day. So now you know, Rox. I remember that day.
Thanks, Tommy.
Yeah, in those
Hey, Adam,
Lenny.
I had stepped away and I heard my name. Could you guys repeat what you said a minute ago about?
He just wanted to hear me say it was a good boss. That's what he wants to hear.
Listen,
so there you go, boss. You were a good boss.
To be a good boss, we all know you got to surround yourself with the right people. I coach football and I tell my team the strength of the wolf is in the pack and the strength of the pack is in the wolf. So, you know, it's a collective effort. And as Roxy said earlier, and to back up a little bit, when we deputized our state and local and federal counterparts, we gave them pretty much the same authority that I have. You know, jump on airplanes, crossing jurisdictional lines, state lines, it didn't matter. The flexibility was there, the state-of-the-art equipment, manpower, money. I mean, the funding was there. So we supported our partners with everything that was needed, any assets that were needed to find these violent fugitives. So that helps a lot. I mean, if you think about it, in a police department like Roxanne's, you know, smaller department upstate New York, but they have felons. I mean, there's murders and sex offenders and whatnot. But you know, when you bring a task force like ours to the table, and I remember trying to recruit these departments when we first kicked this thing off, and I would go in and say, you know, the old, hey, I'm here from the government, I'm here to help, and they show you the exit. But once you know you prove yourself, or once you kind of you get established and you're successful and you got some success stories, I used to tell them, look, I'm not taking Roxanne away from your police department. I'm bringing 350 investigators from all walks of life, from corrections, parole, state police, DEA, ATF, ICE. It didn't matter. We were bringing all this to you to help you find your violent predators that are preying on your folks in your towns, and most of them got it. I mean, we had a huge contingent of NYPD, 26 detectives, 3 sergeants, a lieutenant. The boss at the time, the PC, the police commissioner, was Ray Kelly. Absolutely loved our task force, and always would give us kudos and whatnot. And I'll tell you one more thing, Adam, and I'll shut up. we are not the ones. I mean, there's 3-letter agencies out there that haven't found a microphone they haven't liked yet, if you know what I mean. They love to announce the arrest of, and so we're not like that. We're too busy. I mean, we're out there running around with 50, 60, 100 cases per investigator. We got no time to do press conferences, and we don't care. I didn't care, and I was the commander. I would hand it off to the chief of the department or whoever. Hey, yeah, sure. Just, mention our name and tell them we said hello and I got to go. So that's one thing I thought was really, and I like that. And everybody that worked for us, 13 offices, like I said, 350 full-time, 360, whatever it was. And then there's liaison components of this task force as well in each department around the country. But they all had the same attitude. It's the best job in law enforcement. We're not making cases. We're not sitting on trial for 6 months, 3 months, whatever. We're out there chasing human beings for a living. And as a fugitive investigator, as somebody that you got to get into these people's minds. I mean, there's really, aside from the tactically sound people and I was a huge proponent of the training. Tommy and Roxy will tell you that. We trained all the time. We had to. I mean, we were, when you're knocking doors down for a living every morning, you better know who's on your right and who's on your left and who's behind you as you enter a foreign residence and chasing some guy that just committed a triple homicide. But, but it was a collective effort. That force multiplier was important, I thought, and Roxy put it best. I mean, we all gelled. We all came together. We utilized each other's talents and assets. And if I needed something out of corrections, the guy did 3 years in prison. Well, who visited him? You go to parole. And with Vinny Senzamichi, he was on the show. Vinny, what do you got on this guy? And he'd come in with a stack of papers. So there was just so much information sharing at the speed of the internet. And it really proved valuable over the years.
Well, yeah, you guys had an enormous success rate and never, I remember even after seeing the show, I kind of looked into it because I know a few friends of mine that were considering marshal service. These are, post-military guys. And you're right. I never saw you guys in the news. I never saw anyone praise you, but your success rate was in big numbers, huge numbers. And what it reminds me of when I see that show in particular, what I gather from it, like, not just, coach, give me the ball. It's like an all-star team being put together. Everyone understands they're good at what they do. And they're more acclimating to that team effort and really handling the negative people of society. It's so needed. That show needs to make a comeback. I think it would help inspire people. Because right now, if I'm mistaken or not, law enforcement's not doing great on recruiting. They're not having a lot of new guys come in.
Can you blame them?
You can't, because these people today, like, listen, I say this a lot. If you're having a negative incident with a police officer, record it. Protect yourself. I agree. But don't go looking for them and trying to provoke an issue for likes on a video or for whatever attention you're starving to have. It's nonsense. It's unnecessary. If you want to audit, do it the right way. But if you had a negative impact, otherwise there's no reason to do it. You're damaging the people who walk into fire for us, imagine auditing the U.S. military in times like we have so many enemies that if you were to do that and put military in positions where they don't want to be in the military anymore, it's making us vulnerable for a homeland. And by depleting police and disrespect, you're making us vulnerable in our homes. I don't see. I fail to understand why people don't see that. It's sad.
And just a thought on that. I mean, Roxanne can talk a little bit more about this because she wears a uniform as well, and does the street policing and whatever. But Tommy and I never did working for the government. I mean, when we hit the street, we were going after somebody that was wanted. We had a piece of paper that, we had an arrest warrant 9 out of 10 times, and it's a tough job. And don't you think for a second that fugitive on the other side of that door wouldn't want to kill you before going back to jail. If you did, you better get another job. But, Roxanne, and I mean, the people in uniform, the cops, the men and women that are downrange doing God's work every day. I mean, the climate is I can't turn the news on. I cringe every time I flip on the news. I mean, it's crazy. And then the shootings and the colleges and what's happening in Idaho with the 4 victims that were brutally stabbed recently in Colorado, and we can go on and on and on. And the police aren't responding. I mean, would you want to risk a pension and you're in the Bronx and grandma's living in you know, an apartment for 50 years and God forbid she's being burglarized or raped and nobody's showing up. I mean, this is how crazy it's gotten.
Yeah, I mean, we're at the point now where if you steal under $900 in merchandise, you don't get to call the police. When did that start? You know, that's
Roxanne,
crazy.
what is that all about, Rox? I mean, come on, talk to
me. Those new bail reform laws is a totally destroyed, you know, our very fabric, and that's really what it is. The bottom line, before you used to be able to hold people accountable for the crimes they committed, and we can't do that anymore. You know, you get like 50 slaps on the wrist before they consider even making you have to pay bail for the crime that you committed. Where, you know, even when I started in law enforcement 26 years ago, you did an assault and, you know, somebody was seeing a judge, and the second time an incident happened, you were going to be held on bail. Now you can burglarize a home with people in the house, and if there's no violence taking place, you get an appearance ticket. I can go on and on with the list, but I don't, you know, want to inform, you know, future criminals on, you know, that could be listening,
right.
What they can get away with and can't. But the reality is that the changing of the laws really has, you know, made the spike in crime rise. It's very hard for our guys in uniform, you know, to look at people when they go to take a report. I'm on the investigative end. I run an investigative unit, but even for the patrol side, I see it. I mean, how many times can you go to someone, you know, a neighborhood whose, you know, car got broken into for the 5th time this week and say, I'm going to do everything I can. And they look at law enforcement like we don't want to do our job, which it's not law enforcement. It's the laws that were created, and we can only go out and arrest a person so many times, but we're not the ones that make them pay bail. We're not the one that keeps them in. So it's been really, really tough for law enforcement, and including even detectives. It's just, you know, you can't get people now. Before, there was a certain amount of evidence that you didn't have to turn over upon making an arrest. And now people who were potential witnesses on major cases who were willing to come forward now, you can't get anybody to tell you anything on someone who got murdered down the street, because they know that if an arrest is made, you know, the next day, their information is immediately turned over.
Yeah.
You know, so how do you get people to cooperate? So no one wants to talk. And then you're turning out criminals for the same crimes they committed over and over and over again. So, you know, like, how do you not expect them to step to the next level in crime if they're not being forced, you know, to pay for the original crime that they committed? It's just that no one is being held accountable. And this is what we're dealing with today.
And that's dangerous, right? Because now you're telling victims, don't speak, because this guy that harmed you or victimized you, he might get out tomorrow and take revenge. That's not a good thing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and people know it. So, you know, no, I'm not going to tell you anything because I don't want to go to court next week, or I don't want to, you're going to, you know, where before we were able to keep people's information private for a period of time. And it was a lot easier for us to do our investigations, but now it's been extremely, extremely difficult.
Yeah, they're asking you to be transparent, and unfortunately, here's the sad part of this. Like, they're asking you to be transparent, allowing criminals to better organize themselves against whatever case you're going to bring against them.
Yeah,
that's unfortunate. That's crazy. You know, like prime example. Like, here's the other part of it too: $900 in merchandise. All right, so when people hear this, like, well, you know, it's their way of you know, trying to mitigate a massive issue. But that $900 for that store, whether it be a private or corporate, that goes to payroll. That's paying somebody. That's some children's food money. That's their clothing. You're taking away from the people again. That's all you're doing. You're harming people with these obscene, ridiculous laws. It makes no sense to me.
How about to add to that? How about the security guard that tries to do the right thing for that company, who tries to stop this guy, gets assaulted, and then the guy comes to court, and this guy, you got to release him because, you know, he doesn't have, you know, 3 prior major felony convictions. Oh, so you got to give this guy an appearance because, you know, he doesn't have any priors. And this poor guy just got his face punched in because he tried to stop the guy from stealing $900 in merchandise. So, you know, it's just you can't win no matter which way you go. So
it's endless. It's crazy. I mean, Adam, I remember years ago we'd get a case come across our desk and, wait a minute, didn't we lock this guy up before? And we would call that job security. You know, we would laugh about it, but now it's not. I mean, it's not even funny. It's just. But what's the bottom line, Adam? You tell us. I mean, what's the end game? Well, why are we doing this, for votes? I mean, is it all about power? I don't get it. It makes zero sense to me.
If I had to give you a reason, I'm going to say it's social media, as good as it is, has allowed people to have voices. And when you have something as big as social media, you get a lot of these people that were, maybe they're not so brave or outgoing in public, but behind a wire in their home, they could form opinions, they could get angry, and they get on a bandwagon. So this is the nature of humans. If we see a pack of people, like we're angry at the police, and you know this, we all know this, when you go on social media, you don't exactly hear the whole story. You see the headline, and the majority of people don't even read the body of language that follows that. So they're immediately on the bandwagon. Wow, that cop's they're evil. Brett Preston works here in Florida, and where he works is not a high crime area. This isn't Detroit, LA, and he was shot 4 times. That means there was someone out there with a weapon who their only rationale to use the weapon is to get away, right? This is my way of getting away, and I don't care if it's law enforcement. I don't care who it is. He shot someone. And if you're willing to shoot another human being, right, for whatever reason, just because you did something shady, you know, that should let people know. There's a majority of people out there like this. Not everybody is afraid of hell post-life. You know what I mean? So they're going to behave how they see fit here in life. And it's a shame that it's happening to law enforcement, because I can't repeat this enough. If it gets to be out of control, if we don't stop it now, these people that are saying, well, these are in these inner cities and, you know, that's their problem. Eventually it's going to come to your neighborhood, because they're going to see the opportunity. They're going to see the lacks in law enforcement, because they're being pushed into a corner with these people with their cameras and I'm sorry to say, but the majority of people making these videos about auditing the police, they're not doing this for the better of people. They're doing this for likes. They're doing this to make a video. They're doing this for attention. They're provoking problems. Like one individual who I confronted. When you look into this individual, maybe it's not all, but this guy, no job. His only motivation is to make videos, get likes, and get appraised on social media. And this is the problem. There's not enough good content speaking to law enforcement. And that's why shows like Manhunters needs to come back. You get to see these teen people from all walks of life, all different races coming together to eliminate people who rape children. Another guy in the episode you guys had with a guy, he murdered someone with an AK-47 over an argument. They literally had a disagreement, and he shot him with an AK-47 and killed him. Another guy shot a guy and paralyzed him. And in that episode, you can see Pep. He's gathered, but you can see in his eyes, he's emotionally, he's distraught by this. Like, you're going to shoot this guy, and he's almost going to die, and for what? A disagreement? And the case with Rox, this 13-year-old child is raped by this grown man, and he goes on a run. So what's going to happen is we're going to beat down on the police as much as people are doing right now, and then they're going to, quote-unquote, defund it, and the opportunists are going to walk right in.
Well, it wasn't that long ago, Adam, maybe 10 years ago, we were doing the Manhunter show, and once we got some recognition and we were on for a season, I can remember, and probably Tommy and Rox too, walking into the depressed areas or the projects in the Bronx, whatever, and people would recognize me, and they'd come running over and say, "Hey, you're there, can we take a picture?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but take a look at this photo. You recognize?" "Oh, yeah, he's up there on the 4th floor." I mean, they would give up their mother for, and again, it wasn't just me. It was just because they saw us on television. We're human beings. We're family members. We have kids. We're just like them, and they don't you think for a second that these, folks in these towns want this lawlessness? I mean, Chicago, Detroit, New York. I mean, look what's going on in these major metropolitan cities. I mean, it is completely out of control. We did a sweep down in Camden, New Jersey. They gave us their top 50 most wanted fugitives, and it was an initiative that went on for 2 weeks, and they arrested 49 out of 50 fugitives, and these are felony fugitives in Camden, New Jersey. I was down there the last day, and it was about 4:00 in the morning. We grabbed this drug dealer. He was number 49, and I'll never forget coming out of that house with him in handcuffs, and I was walking behind him down the street. And there were people smoking Marlboros out on the porch at dark 30, and they were clapping. And I'm looking, and I thought a parade was coming down the street. It was us. They were clapping for us, and they were so happy that we were there. And these are folks that have lived in these neighborhoods forever, and that's what I would say 99.9% of people want.
Yeah.
They don't want this craziness that's going on out there.
Yeah, I agree, because they're victims in their own community. And, you know, however they got there, immaterial. Like we spend in America $70 billion annually on the lottery, and not everyone wins. So where's this money go, right? There should be ways to, you know, help these communities with all the money that we're putting into. I know people that spend money on lottery weekly. If they would have saved every dollar on a lottery, they'd retire millionaires, you know? So for those communities, and especially those communities, these are the same places where, like, oh, defund the police. But how many of them are on the bandwagon because they're surrounded by dangerous people and they have to fly that flag? You know what I mean? It puts a pressure on them.
Well, it's the old adage too, and you know, these guys will tell you, Rox and Tommy. I mean, unless you've been downrange and doing this type of work, you don't have a clue. You don't understand that split-second decision. You have no idea what it's like to have to shoot somebody or to get shot at, or, you know, God forbid, you know, you have to take somebody's life or whatever. It's not like we wake up every morning and we say, hey, you know, let's go kill somebody. It just doesn't work that way. I used to get in arguments, and I know Tommy and Rox too, with people, with moms, dads. You're doing interviews, Q&A, and people knocking on doors trying to find somebody that just burnt the trailer down with 8 kids in them and killed them all. And I would tell her, I said, look, what do you think? I got up this morning and said I was going to come to your house to harass you, Mom? And number 2, if you knew where your son was, would you tell me? And most of the time they would say, no. And what does that tell you? A, they know where he is. And you know, and B, it's like, at least they're being honest with you. But, you know, it's tough out there. I mean, fugitive investigations, it's who was it? George Orwell that once said, people sleep peaceably in their beds at night only because rough men and women stand ready to do violence on their behalf. Right. Well, these are the men and women that I work with for 3 decades that are out there doing this type of work. And, you know, I salute each and every one of them still. And I've been gone, 8 years now.
Yeah, and especially for Tommy, and what his expertise is, you know, like he said earlier, the illegal aliens. I don't think people realize there were groups like MS-13 for a while coming in illegally. And they were, I have to say, violent at a high scale. They set the bar for violence, and it was running rampant. And it's because we didn't have enough control over borders. There's this flip side. There's people saying we should protect it. And there's a majority of people like, no, it's you know, this America to free, and they deserve to come here. And that's fine if you come here through the right channels. But the majority of them are not doing that. They're coming here to set up shop because this is the land of the free. A lot of opportunity to be had here. And if you defund police, forget it. You imagine a world where MS-13's unchecked? Can you imagine that?
Well, you're right. They live in plain sight, too. I mean, we had a guy, Tommy will tell you about the case. It was a Greek fugitive, murdered somebody, was part of a homicide, and he's flipping hamburgers in New Jersey. We got him in surveillance, waiting on the provisional arrest warrant to come through. And we're watching a guy flipping hamburgers on his porch, living the life of Riley. And
That's right. That's right.
The Greek guy, and then you got mad at me because you asked me a question, and I said, it's all Greek to me, Tommy.
Yeah, well, yeah, one of the episodes, Adam, we actually pulled him out of the SUV in the middle of the street at gunpoint. Interpol wanted for murder in Greece. Matter of fact, me and Rox went into the restaurant. We had lunch. Remember, Rox?
I do.
Yeah.
I remember that episode.
What did you eat, and did I pay for it?
Absolutely. So we went in there. You know, we heard, well, you know, he's in there somewhere. He might be a cook, who knows? So we went in and we looked. We didn't see him. Eventually, it wound up being his day off. So that's what Lenny was alluding to. You know, he's cooking on the barbecue. So we took off. We went to, I want to say, we went to the tunnel. I want to say it was in Jersey. So he's in Jersey. Pep is with us. You know, we're all on surveillance. And here he comes off his porch on the 2nd floor, opens up the barbecue, and here he is cooking. And remember, this is a murder. And remember, Adam, of course, there's a victim in this case. You know, the victim's family, you know, they get no justice because the guy ran from Greece all the way to America, and they don't know if he's ever going to be caught. So, good. We have Marshals have an Interpol office in Washington. They give them the case. They figure out, okay, the guy's probably in New York. They send it to Lenny, you know, and he's an illegal alien, of course, because he shouldn't be in this country to begin with when you're a fugitive for murder. So we get the case, and, you know, it takes us a couple of days, and we scoop him up. You know, that was a good episode. But, you know, remember all the victims, you know, of that murder. of the other murderers we caught, or even the cop killers that we caught. All these people, the victims, have families, that, not that I really hate that, you get some sort of closure. Well, nobody's getting no closure. They'll get justice, when somebody gets life or death. They'll get justice, but, closure, they're never going to forget that loved one.
Yeah, not to mention
99% of the time. That loved one, Adam, 99% of the time, in our cases, are innocent victims. Yeah, sometimes it's a bad guy that kills a bad guy, but most of the time it's an innocent victim.
Agreed. And you got to understand too, it's closure's great, but then how many of these families as well, one of their loved ones have been murdered or raped, and there's that fear that this guy's out there, that he may return. Whether he's running or not, that fear exists in the back of your mind. And I promise you, I say this a lot, you're not going to see doctors or attorneys tracking this guy down to bring him in. We're going to call in law enforcement. That's the purpose of having him there. That's the reason we have high caliber, quality team members like yourself and others that handle this, because most Americans won't deal with it, or they'll turn a blind eye to it. Some of them just can't handle the idea. I could tell you first, for me, if there's, I own a weapon. Someone breaks my house, I'm going to defend myself, but police are getting called. I'm not a hero. There's no cape on my back. You need a buffer. You need law enforcement. And I can't stress this enough. Just watching that show, watching you guys travel around, you guys are never in the show have you gone to a location where it was just laxed. It's tense. There's tension there. Not to mention you're going to neighborhoods that don't favor police, right? So on top of you looking for this person, and I found the one, I think in my opinion anyway, the hardest place for you guys to set up surveillance would be like when you guys were in Orlando. These are wide open neighborhoods. There's really, everyone knows everyone there. So you easily stand out there. Whereas opposed to like in the city where there's, multi-level buildings and places you could park. It's dangerous. What you do is dangerous. And the people you go after, I can't say this enough, their intentions are not to be caught. All right. So I don't know, man. I really hope something turns around. I'm banking on them bringing a show like that back. I think people need to see that again. There needs to be incentive for future people of law enforcement to say, we could do this again. We're a team and we're here for the better of the people. I don't know. It's scary.
I'll let you and your listeners in on a little bit of something. We're trying to get something back with the US Marshals and the 8 regional fugitive task forces that they have. I've been to several meetings, and fingers crossed they want to do something to try to get some positive press back for law enforcement and to show the great work that the men and women do every day with these task forces. But talk a little bit about Manhunters and some of the outtakes and things you were talking about. I mean, we had, and just so your audience knows and your listeners, we had anywhere from 3 to 5 film crews following us every day. And some cases obviously never made it to air. I remember one case, we had a guy, I forget the crime, but we end up in the Bronx, and he was on the 5th floor with his brother in the apartment. So we set up surveillance. We had guys on the ground with a camera. We had a camera that went up to the roof with the fire escapes. And we had another guy on one of the fire escapes below the target location. We had guys at the front door, and we're knocking, and the brother comes running out, and he says, he's going to kill himself. He's going to kill himself. He's on the phone with my mother. And so we're like, what do you do at this point, right? You're trying to talk to the guy. Now he's on the ledge. He's out the window. He's straddling the ledge. The guys outside are trying to talk to him. We're talking to him at the front door. And he hangs up with his mom, and he dove at him 5 stories onto concrete with a camera watching the whole thing from the roof and from the ground. And when he hit the ground head first, you can only imagine what that looked like. So, of course, Vinny Senzamichi was on the scene with us, and he's a former he's an ESU guy, and he brings his medical kit in. We did our best, and sadly, he didn't make it. However, what do you think the neighbors said? They pushed him. They pushed him out the window. Yeah. So thank God we had cameras rolling, because the next day the Manhattan DA's office exonerated everybody because they saw exactly what happened. So I said, this gets down to our public affairs office, and the deputy chief down there calls me up. He said, geez, I heard about that case. He said, this is going to be a great episode. I said, are you crazy? we're not airing this thing. We're putting it in the garbage can and we're moving on. But that's one of, I mean, there was a couple of shootings that happened I won't get into and whatnot. But the show itself, I mean, the behind the scenes stuff, the fun we had. I mean, Roxanne and I traveled to Puerto Rico. How many times, Rox? I don't even remember.
I think like 3 or 4 times.
Thank God she walks the walk and talks the talk. And I know she hates my candy because she threw, in one of the episodes, which I didn't know, I offered her a piece of, I like these circus peanuts. I go, here, have one of these. She took a bite and she threw it out the window. Of course, I didn't see it until the episode came out that she threw it out the window. But it was
I was stressful because I remember us trapped in that van for hours in that neighborhood, so we wouldn't get made. And it was the first time that we had an opportunity to break loose to go get some snacks, and we were all hungry. And yeah, you gave me that, and I threw it out. And I was, it was funny then at the time that we had waited hours to get, to get to the nearest store because we couldn't leave that neighborhood. That's how tight knit that community was, or we'd get made.
You gave me this cookie that you swore was the best cookie going. I took a bite. I lost 3 teeth at them. I think 3 of my teeth cracked on this cookie she gave me. I said, "Oh, this is great." But we did get our fugitive.
We did.
For that guy that jumped out a window, people need to understand something about that.
Yeah.
He put no value on his own life, which means he had zero value for other people's lives. Right? And if if that guy had an automatic weapon and he was backed in the corner, he doesn't value his own life. Guaranteed he's not valuing the life of himself, his brother, the law enforcement, the neighbors. He doesn't care.
Well, what about Mom? I mean, he hangs up and says goodbye. And what about us? We saw it. I've seen people blow their brains out in hotel rooms, and with brain matter just covered the walls and in front of us. I mean, think about what we have to live with. I mean, you talk about living in a war zone and PTSD and whatnot, and thank God we're all okay. But except for Tommy, he's a little out there. But we
Thanks, Len.
I love it. The things we've seen, and again, we're not beating our own chest. It's just it's the real world. I mean, that's what we did for a living. We signed on the dotted line. We knew what we were getting into. But I just thank God that there are people that are out there still doing this type of work and trying to keep our community safe and there are people that appreciate it. Forget about what the media is telling you or all these crazy groups that are out there. They appreciate law enforcement just as much as you do, Adam.
Yeah, and they need to, because for those people who own the nice car, they got the house, they feel cozy and comfortable, just keep in mind, you have those things and are protected because most criminals fear prison. They fear being caught. They fear being arrested. And so the majority of these people that are looking at your nice stuff and don't take it is because there's people like, your team out there that prevent them that say, if you do this, we're going to get you. Like there's an episode with Pep, right? I loved it because your picture comes across my desk. I don't care if you're Antarctica, I'm coming for you, and that sends a message. If you're going to commit heinous crimes, we're going to find you one way or the other. We're going to get you. And that needs to be said. Like right now, you're the thing in Idaho obviously we were speaking about earlier. That bothers me a little bit. That's really meticulous.
Yeah, I've been on and off the news this past week with that case, and they have not identified a suspect yet. But you think about that up close and in person, hate crime, multiple stab wounds to the upper torso on all 4 victims. I mean, it was obviously a targeted attack. I'm hoping law enforcement, the FBI knows involved. They're flipping that crime scene upside down. I'm hoping they got a person of interest or a suspect, and they're going to keep it close to the vest, and rightfully so. So that person doesn't go dark or off the grid any further. But what a crazy! And here it is. 20,000 people lives in this small little town, and you talk about small town USA. Yeah. It's coming to you. It's not just New York City and Chicago.
Right. I mean, it's everywhere. And I can't say it enough. Without law enforcement, these people that commit these crimes, he committed a crime, he's running. But if there was not a strong presence of law enforcement, what stops these people from saying, well, we don't have to move, we'll just take over? There's no buffer.
We always say, Adam, you can run, but you can't hide. When you run, you only go to jail tired.
That's true. That's well said. Rox, for you, you're still in uniform. What's going on with you? How's day to day going? Oh, yeah, we lost Rox. All right, well, we'll have to. I'll have to address that next time.
Probably running after some fugitive out the front door. No,
probably. Yeah,
still dial back in, I'm sure.
Yeah, she's tenacious. I'll give her that much. Watching her, like, you could see in her eyes, especially when you were swearing her in, you could see in her eyes that meant something to her, right? It's not just, Tommy said something to me pre-podcast. We don't do this for money. We literally do this to suppress evil people. You can't say it any better now, Tommy.
Yeah, she just texted me with those rocks. She's dialing back in.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Adam. I'll say this. Yes, we'd like the show to come back because we want to let the people know exactly what's happening, like they did back then. It keeps people informed how bad vicious criminals can be. But take some solace in the fact that where we left, that same New York, New Jersey Fugitive Task Force is still up and running. They're still doing what we did. It's just not in anybody's eyes. As
Right.
Lenny said, especially the Marshal Service, you don't like to take publicity for anything. We just don't do it. Occasional mention now and then by the extraneous agencies, for instance, the NYPD, if we lock somebody up, they'll usually say something with the assistance of the US Marshals or assisting the US Marshals, but we just don't take credit for it. So that's the big advantage to being on television, a show like Manhunters, and that everybody gets to see it, and they see how bad and vicious criminals that we do chase. Therefore, you bring back some credence to law enforcement, and like we mentioned before, how bad it is all over the country with this defund police nonsense.
Agreed. So for you, Tommy, if they bring the show back, you're on board, yeah?
Oh, yeah, Lenny knows. Lenny knows.
Roxy?
Wherever he can use me or Roxy, and some of the other old cast members, Lenny's still in touch with, and so am I. Yeah, we'd love to come back in some capacity. Of course, if they're filming, active investigators, deputies and detectives, agents like we were, then only the active can do it. Only Roxy's still active.
Right. Roxy, you're still active, right?
Yes, I am.
So if they bring the show back, you're on board 100%?
Yeah, I definitely would consider it. But you got so much younger talent now.
Yeah, but the younger talent's one thing, but you have, I would think the task force, a team would be built or predicated on experience, right? People like you, Lenny, and Tommy. Lenny, what about you? They bring the show back. You're going to have a part?
Well, they've asked me to host it, but I don't quite know what that means. I did speak to the new director that was appointed by the president recently, and a funny story about him, and hopefully he's not listening to your podcast. But I was at a golf outing recently for the US Marshals Survivors Benefit Fund. It was about 300 people. It was amazing, the turnout. And I'm at the dinner, and there was some guest speakers. The director got up and spoke, and I've never met him before. So there was a break. I was out in the hallway looking at some of the things they were selling, and he comes up to me and he says, "Hey," he says, "I wanted to introduce myself." I said, "Well, I certainly know who you are. Congratulations on your appointment," and blah, blah, blah. He says, "Well," he says, "I got to tell you something, but you can't tell anybody." Now, here I am telling you and all your audience. So, he says to me, he goes, "I got to tell you," he says, "when I got the nomination and the phone call from a congressional person that was a friend of mine and asked me if I'd be considered the director's job with the Marshal Service, and then I was going to get the appointment, I had to binge watch Manhunters to figure out what the U.S. Marshals did."
That's a good.
So I said to him, I said, so wait a minute, I got you the job? And he laughed. And I told him, I said, "Look, I know you don't have time right now to discuss this," but he goes, no, let's take a walk. I felt like John Gotti in downtown Manhattan. Director. He says, "Look," he goes, I want to do something like Manhunters again. I love that show. We need it. He says, let's have a further discussion about it. And I said, "Well, I've been talking with your public affairs and other folks and department heads, and, I'll do my part. And I think if I put my fingerprints on this thing, people trust me around the country. We did a show. We've been there. We've been downrange with cameras. We get it. But, in his negative stuff, well, people are a little shy of cameras and this and that." I said, "Director, they're all wearing body cameras."
Right.
I mean, they've got cameras on themselves every day. So
Yeah.
why not have ones you can edit?
And it makes it easier because people like Roxy's very, approachable. Like Tommy was saying earlier with the domestic case, she's approachable. And so that kind of team makes it work well. You guys have personalities, you have character, your own set of character. And for me, it imprinted. Like the first time I spoke to you, remember, I was like starstruck. I'm like, I'm on with Lenny DePaul. It's such a big deal for me. And you're law enforcement. And it really should be that if you're going to have a show, is to make you guys the impression on people that we are people and we are here for the benefit of you. And, we get up every day and deal with people I promise you don't want to deal with for you. It's not like you're going to make multi-million-dollar contracts picking up criminals. You're doing this for the better of humanity and America.
Well, I'll give, and I have to jump here sadly in about a minute, but I'll give the production company kudos as well. I mean, you got to tip your hat to the folks that put this show together because, as you recall, every 62 episodes that we did, we batted 1,000. I mean, we arrested everybody in every episode. So they made us look good. There was a process to do that between myself and our headquarters and public affairs and general counsel and attorneys and everybody that had to look at this thing before it went to air. And it was just an outstanding job by everybody that was involved. And then the stars like Tommy and Roxy and Peppers and Mike Romani and Michi and the whole crew. I had a lot of fun, but I was a human punching bag for about 4 years. But I'll tell you what, the recruiting lines were ringing off the hook. People were taking their curtain calls after the episode 1 finally aired because there was pressure on all of us that this could have went south in a hurry. And everybody that was involved with, Rox, Tommy, the whole crew, we were worried. I mean, I don't think I slept the night before the first episode, and we had a huge party in New York City. The director himself came up and they pretty much slapped me on my back and said, "Hey, well, I hope this is going to be good for us." And I said, "Yeah, well, I hope it is too." and sure enough, it was their show after about the 3rd episode. So I was, my punching bag days were over after that. So.
Yeah, I think a show would be good. It would put a positive spin on law enforcement. I don't want to use the word immortalized, but at some point, you become a public figure, you're somewhat immortalized. And it gives people a young guy who wants to be a cop. He's watching Lenny and Tommy and Roxy, a young lady who's out there says, "Can I do this?" And it lets them see you can. It's possible, and you're needed.
We'll turn it around. We'll get it turned around, Adam. But look, I just want to sign off, Tommy. I love you, pal. Rox, I love you too. Thanks for coming.
Love you too, brother.
Good to hear your voices.
Lenny, we'll talk soon.
Adam, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Lenny.
Take care.
All right, Tommy, Rox, we'll close out with you guys. So people know, I want to see another Manhunters bad. And I think you guys, between the lot of you, you have the talent, you have the resources if you get involved with the task force. And above all, you have experience. And experience, it's needed. Like Roxy, you got a good point. There's young talent out there, but you can't do great things without having the history or an education to it, right? So Tommy, you guys would have to be the spearhead of that.
I'm not sure if you're taking it up, Tommy, but definitely, I know that we definitely could, assist in many ways. But yeah, if it does, then God willing, if it did, and they could use us, that'd be great. I would definitely be on board. But the idea of working with the new talent today is definitely also exciting. You have a lot of new guys on that, bring on new ideas that, with today's new technology and, social media and things like that, can put a different spin to it. But I definitely would love for the public to see what those guys are still doing despite all those defund police, requests and things like that those TFO, those task force guys are still out there knocking doors and still picking up fugitives. And it would be nice for the public to still see that.
Yeah. I mean, so let me ask you this. Social media, was that a benefit to you guys for investigation?
Tommy, you want to?
Yeah. Like, let's take, Facebook, for instance. Bad guys, they use it sometimes stupidly. They'll put the pictures with drugs and guns,
yeah.
You know what I mean, on social media. Well, that's a home run for us.
Right.
You know, and they don't even, it's not even blocked, you know, it's open. You know, we can get into it. If we can't, we just get a warrant. And then we see their social media, and the fools, you know, what they'll do is they'll have guns and drugs right on the screen. And then, of course, we can track their location. So, yeah, it's a big benefit for us. You know, if you're stupid enough to keep using it, keep using it. We're going to keep coming to get you.
Yeah, it's public evidence too, right? They're like, they're basically handing you, they're doing their own surveillance.
Yep.
Just think how well you can
Yeah,
study. I look at it from this perspective on the investigative portion and doing the interviews. And just by looking at somebody's profile, you now know how to do or how to engage them in conversation. You know what they like. You know what they get involved in. You know the kind of people they hang out with. You get to hear the language and how they speak. And you can go back years for whatever, you know, for the amount of time that they put their stuff out for the public to see. So it gives you a better way of being able to approach your interviews and how to speak, to talk to people or get information or to tell whether, you know, determine whether they're telling, you know, being truthful, you know, or, you know, telling you that, you know, a lie about something that you already know, you've already seen on that they forget because they've been on Facebook or whatever for, you know, 5 years or whatever. So it definitely helps out doing interviews. And, you know, I mean, but it's good also to be on top of all the new apps that are out. You know, it's just not
Right.
Facebook. I mean, I consider Facebook old now with this new generation. But to be up on all the other applications that these, you know, that the new generation is using today for sure is definitely, you know, a plus.
Yeah, it allows you to see the psychology of the person too, their day-to-day thoughts, their known associates. And like Tommy said, these people are posting, I've seen it where people are posting pictures with guns and money and nonsense. It's ridiculous. So yeah, I imagine that's a great way to get into the psychology of someone they're tracking down. Not to mention, I think some of these apps check them in, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, but they're getting smart on some of those things too now in today's day and age. But
I think Roxanne's feed's a little buggy. Yeah.
Yeah, she's in and out. I guess just me and you left, Adam.
That's what it is. Well, we're going to close it anyway. I'm going to talk to you guys in post. So anyone listening right now, we're going to say good day, good evening, good night, or whatever it is for you. And I'm going to talk to Tommy and Rox in post.
Very good. Thank you, Adam.